B2A Solutions is your trusted IT consulting company located in the heart of Europe. We design, build, and maintain scalable and user-friendly solutions tailored to your needs. Want to join a team that is shaping the future of the JavaScript ecosystem in Belgium? A team involved in the community by organizing events and contributing to open source? Join B2A Solutions now.
Our very first speaker today, all the way from Ireland. Yes, she is the head developer advocate at Bit. Yeah, wow, if you look at her pedigree, it's very impressive. I mean, it says Microsoft MVP, GitHub Star, Google GDE, Cloudinary MD, an Auth0 ambassador, a Nuxt ambassador. Wow, and sporty to the boot. I mean, the combination is rare. Let's be honest. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for Mrs. Debbie O'Brien.
Oh, I was going to dance. Why'd you give the music away? Hello, everyone, and welcome. Good morning. How are you all doing? Good, good. Nice to be here. This is my first time in Brussels, and I arrived here, and people gave me gluten-free beer and chocolate, so I'm happy. I'm going to come back. Okay, today we're going to talk about, it's all about components. Welcome, everyone, and apologies to the people at home, because I'm going to move around a lot, and you might not see me, but anyway, that's life. Thank you for taking a day out of your wonderful lives to actually be here in person, and those on the screen, don't look at Slack and anything else, just keep watching. Okay, we already had a beautiful introduction. The only thing is I don't work at Bit anymore. I left. If you want to know where I'm going, you'll find out maybe on Sunday on Twitter, so you can follow me, Debs_O'Brien. And yeah, I do a lot of sport. I think it's really, really important because I do a lot of stuff, and people see, like, you know, I'm always on YouTube and blogging and stuff like that. But it's really important to know that I also spend a lot of time not doing tech stuff. And I want you to all, if you want to, like, you know, up in your career and start doing a lot of stuff, take time out and be a normal person as well. It's really important. I spend about 3 hours a day doing sport, at least. And find your hobby and do that. Don't just spend 12 hours in front of a screen. But as you, yeah, 3 hours of sport, that doesn't feel a lot, but it, to me, but it does to some people. But yes, I am a GitHub Star, Google Developer Expert, Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, et cetera, et cetera. If any of you here want to know more about those programs, come and talk to me. I especially work with Google Developer Expert program to try and get more diversity and try and get more women in tech and more women recognized. So come and speak to me. If you are a woman here, or if you are a guy and has a woman friend and wants them to get involved in the program, just come and see me. So moving on, let's get started. The modern web is component driven, right? We all agree, yeah? We're all building components, hopefully. Yes? No one's in PHP land still, no? Good. Okay. Component-driven, basically reuse-based approach to defining, implementing, and composing loosely coupled independent components into systems. So basically, this is my components. If I'm building something like a product card, so how would we kind of do that? So basically, like, I'm going to scroll down here, and you can see that everything is built out of a component. So small that the title is a component, the paragraph there, the intro is a component, the image is a component, the price, the currency is a component, the button is obviously a component, and you're probably saying, that's a lot of work. Why would you put an image as a component? Well, let me tell you why. I mean, you could just use the image tag, right? But if you make it a component, then it's much easier to modify. Now, why would you modify it? Well, I built my website with Nuxt. Any Nuxt fans? Yeah? 2. Oh, my God. Anyway, good. I'm not doing the Nuxt talks. That's fine. But yes, Nuxt then brought out the Nuxt image, which is a really performant way of loading images on your page. And then I had to go and manually, one by one, go and change that image tag to the Nuxt image tag. And that was a lot of work. If it had been a component, it would have been easier. I would have changed it once. And that's basically why we build everything in components. So components, something like this, my shoes card then is built with the card, the heading, the text, the image, the currency, the button, are all the components that make up that one product card. Okay, and then the great thing is that you can actually like separate it and put it in a cloud so that each of those components can then be used in multiple projects. So you can have a component that's in the shoe store repo, another that's in the e-commerce repo, and another that's in the base repo. I don't know why I call it base, but you call it whatever you want. So how do we build component driven? Very simply, we've got to think about every component as a product for anyone to use. Think of it as a product. You're building a product. You're not just building a simple component. You're building a product that's going to stand the test of time and everyone is going to use. So basically, your component should have a great developer experience, because we're developers and we hate when it's a terrible experience. So try and build your product that has a great experience. It should have different contexts. It should be easy to use. It should have a great API that everyone can understand, and it should be loosely coupled. I mean, I could say never coupled, but sometimes you have to couple it to something, so loosely. Right? Now, if you do that and build your components this way, you're going to have developers who are basically going to write better software. And we all want to write better software these days, don't we? Yes, we do. All the junior developers are going to come in and go, software's so much nicer. Like, why did you all complain about it, right? Maintainable software, because we do have to maintain these. Companies are not changing every 2 years just because you see people changing. It's not happening in the enterprises. So maintainable software. We need to write more testable software, right? Because we are all writing tests, yes? Yes, one person, great. And we want to create a better developer experience. So if we do that, what do the organizations get? They basically get better software, which is, what they're paying you to do, so that's cool. And they also get to save time because, then they don't have to rebuild things, etc. They get to save money because the developers are staying in the company and not leaving every 6 months to go to another job. So that's also saving a lot of money. And they get happier developers, which is really, really important because we all want to love our job at the end of the day. I mean, we do change a lot, but still. Okay, so to build component-driven, what do we need to do? We start off with building components. Components should be themable, right? Very simple. I'm going to, show you a little bit about this in a minute. They should be composable, so you can compose them together, kind of like Lego. They should be encapsulated, so they should have everything that they need. Independent, so you can put them in a cloud and then just use them anywhere you want. And they should be reusable, right? So you can reuse it across your application. Simple, right? This all makes sense. This is good. Let's talk a little bit about themable. So when it comes to themable, you should design your components with themes so that it can be used differently in other apps. Right? Are we all theming our apps? Yeah, adding themes? Yeah, not so much. Okay, we need to work on that one. Theming your apps makes it very simple to have a product card that can be used in different stores. Just by changing a couple of CSS variables, you've now got 2 components that look very different by just making, simple changes. So this is how you should be building it so that one day in the future you can use it somewhere else. Composable. Compose smaller components together to form more complex components. So basically, like I showed you before, you have that one product card that's composed of those smaller components. They can then be used to compose other components. Encapsulated, so exposes the interfaces which allow the caller to use its functionality and hides the details of the internal variables of state. So something like this, the product card, you can see it has the currency as a prop, the button text as a prop, the source, the alt text as a prop, the title, the text. So then you're just taking that product card and filling out all the information, and you can use it in various places. It should be independent, really important. Components are independent and have their own version and revision history, so you can independently use it across multiple applications. And it should have its own build pipeline, which makes it more exciting so that you can build that component and ship it and go home, and the other people on your team, they can stay working late if they want to. And minimal dependencies on other components. Obviously, you want to use components, but you don't want to be dependent on something. So being independent, again, you can see my components here have a different version. You can see the different version. The button's on version 2.03, and the card is on version 1.011. Okay, you want your components to be reusable, so reused in different scenarios in the same or in different applications. So this makes sense. You have a button component, and you can use it in the product card. You can use it in the hero. And we all love buttons, and we all have at least 27 buttons in our application that we have to maintain. So this will kind of reduce that issue. And then you have, everything looks the same, consistency across all apps, which is what they're paying you to do. But somehow we don't seem to be able to do it, do we? So I'm going to show you quickly an idea of how you should build your components, right? So this is documentation. Documentation is very important to be able to document your components. Add your Figma designs right there into your actual component documentation so you can see at all times, is it the same as the design? Create your compositions. have your API done out, so anyone that wants to use this component can see at all times what's going on, how it's working, how to use it, and be able to play around with it to see if they actually want to use this component. So here in the live playground, I can actually remove the disable feature, and this is what it would look like. This is a link, so I can remove this. What if it was just a primary button? Okay, that looks the same, that's cool. What if I make it a secondary button? And I can live see the changes and see what's going on. So if I want to use this button, I can see how it works. I can click through, see all the compositions, and see everything that's available to me if I was going to use this button in my application. Again, tests, you're all writing tests. Tests should be written because then it makes your product be more trustable. Dependencies, you can see I have no dependencies. You can go through the code and see how I wrote my code and actually kind of say, yes, she knows how to write her code, or, oh my God, I'm not trusting her code. So you can see what's going on at all times. You can see that they're using Sass, so if you wanted to use Sass. And then you can see the version history. So you can go through every single version of the component to be able to, if you had to go back in time, say you were updating one website and the other one was using the old version, you could go back and use the old version and not update until you're ready to update all components. And that old, outdated version will stay alive, and you can still read the old docs from the old version. You can still see the old styles and the old API, and everything will work. And you can just, go back and forth between the versions and choose and install the one you want. So basically, yeah, this is a much nicer one. I improved my design since then. And then you can basically just use it. So this component you can install with NPM or with Yarn. Now with PNPM as well. I didn't update this slide. And you can basically just install it and then use it in any of the applications. So that makes it easy to use across any apps. So that's basically what we're trying to do, build components that you can then use and install anywhere. If we do that, we have components that are decoupled. So we can build our application based on all these components that can live in any repo anywhere in the world, and then you can build multiple applications. So now the question is, do we depend on others or do we build our own? This is always a difficult question, right? We have to build this component. What do we do? Do we build everything from the start, or do we take something that's already built? And I love this website, Why Waste Time Reinventing UI Components? I think it's a great title. Sometimes, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Let's take a drop down and let's, just implement it, use someone else's. It's quicker and easier, gets the job done. We have accessibility out of the box. So sometimes this makes sense. Again, headless UI is another great one. There's some really, really cool one here. Again, fully accessible UI components designed to integrate beautifully with Tailwind CSS. Any Tailwind fans? Yes, we're getting bigger and bigger. I love Tailwind. So yeah, if you want to drop down, you just take these components and then just style them with Tailwind or whatever. So this could be a good way too. So, deciding whatever you want to do is up to you. If you want to build your component libraries, your design system from scratch, or you want to use someone else, that's, again, a decision that you have to make. There's no right or wrong answer here. So let's talk a little bit about design systems. So when it comes to design systems, it all starts with the designer. The designer is very important. Are there any designers here? Nice, excellent, right? Designers are one of the most important people on your team, and you should work with your developers. Do you work with the developers? You're also a developer. That's even better. You're a rock star. Wow. Okay, so any designer that can also develop is amazing, and any developer that can also design is also amazing, or at least understand each other, because if you work together, you can do amazing things. So this is the design that I got from my designer. So this is just on Figma kind of file, and I've got to create this kind of page. So if I have to create this page, where do I start? So we should start with design tokens, right? And you can do out your design tokens in Figma, for example. And basically, what you can do then with the design tokens, your sizes, for example, your widths, is then use, I haven't used this, but I really like it, so I put it in here. But this tool by Lucas is basically will take your design tokens from Figma and output it into a JSON format. And then you can just put it in. Now, I created my own JSON just because I was doing things quick. But you could actually just take it out, and then it has automatic to GitHub and stuff, so it's kind of really cool. So check that out. And basically what I did was I created my own JSON, so it looks similar to this, where I'm taking all my design tokens, and here I'm just object assigning them all together, right? So my base theme has font family, font size, font weight, primary color, secondary, error color, border radius, border, blah, blah, blah. So these are all my tokens. I'm going to show you a little bit about how it's done out. Very, very simply, I have the design tokens like this. So this is the the primary color tokens, and they've literally got primary color, primary heavy, primary light, text on primary background heavy. How you name this is completely up to you. Just decide a name and stick to the same name. There's no right and wrong answer with namings. Just make it kind of clear. And I'm using a theme schema because I'm using TypeScript, so just make sure that I've got like all the schema correct. And then what I did was I built a component so that I could actually see and visualize the design tokens. So this, as a developer, I can come along here and say, okay, these are the general colors or primary colors available to us, the background colors, the border radiuses, and I can see like what the CSS variable is, or how I would use it if I was using CSS and JS, and what the hex value of it is. And what this does is then when the designer comes along, the designer will own the design token and add a new color in there, add a new design token in there. This will then completely just add it on here, and I'll get that new value. Or if it's just a change in the value, if we changed here, but then my application will also just get that value. So that component, having the design token as a component, is very, very beneficial. So CSS vars, basically, we need them to be in, like, say, CSS vars for this to work. Anyone using CSS vars? Yeah, that's cool. So a lot more of you, which is great. Hopefully everyone should be at this stage starting to move towards CSS vars, because it's full support and it makes it much easier then to be able to just throw in vars. You can still be using Sass or whatever, that's also cool, but CSS vars out of the box just works. So just by having this var text on primary, that means when the design token changes or whatever that value is pulled in, then all my components will get that coming from the theme. And then I've just got, like, you can see the color there at the end. That's just a default for when I'm like, I don't have the theme set up and I'm just like playing around with stuff. You don't have to put the default in, but I like to do it. So my base theme then looks like this. This is my primary colors, and these are my secondary colors. And everything then that uses this theme is going to get this. If I change that base theme, it's just going to change across the application, across all the components. Now, to do this, I'm using React, even though I'm a Nuxt fan, but that's also cool. So this one is all in React, and I'm using the theme provider. So I'm importing create theme from, this is a component that they built. What this component does is going to take those design tokens and just convert it, like take the CSS vars and just kind of convert them so that can be used, or take the JSON values and convert them to CSS vars. So I've got the base theme provider, overrides equals custom theme, and then everything in there that's going to get those theming, which means I can put in that base theme, or put in pink theme, purple theme, green theme, whatever theme, and then my whole app changes. Like pink theme, right? This would be my pink theme, which is really, really cool. So my primary color, hot pink, would then be the primary color across all the applications by just making that one change. So it makes it very, very easy to just quickly change applications. And I worked with a company a good few years ago where we had 12 themes, and it was an absolute nightmare, and we had to set up a system that basically could do something like this. And when you start scaling so much to the point that you haven't done the groundwork first, trying to then go back and fix all that so that it is themable is a nightmare. So yeah, start off with themes. Okay, cool. So it's component time, right? So we're developers here. We're not designers. The designers have done their job, and now we need to start building components, right? Well, kind of wrong. So this is when we need to sit down with our designer again, and we need to basically kind of like take out, what are we going to do? We're going to get the product. We're going to call this. Now, this is like really hard to see, but don't worry. But this is all in Figma, where we basically wireframe it out so that we have the same names in Figma and the same names as our components in our actual, in our application. So we want to have the same naming so that when you go and find that component in Figma, you can see the same one. So agree and work with your designer on naming your components. So then you have the page here, and you know what components you have to build. Now we're ready to build the components, right? And it's like, no, we're developers and we still haven't done any work. Now you should list out your components, right? So you want to take the heading component, the image. These are all the components that I need to build. So if I list them out, I can now see which components I need to build and which I already have, right? So these are the components I need to build. So now I need to think about the API, which is like, oh my God, we're still thinking. We haven't built anything, right? So when you want to build the heading component, you would think of like H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. This is what I want the developer to be able to use that component. The same with the image component. I want the source, I want the alt. I want it to be required because I want you all to use alt tags in your images, and loading lazy or eager, for example. So again, the text component, the button component is a little bit more complex. Remove from cart component, which is a a functionality to remove something from the cart, which uses the button component underneath it. So now it's time to build. Now we're like, right, okay, we've got all the groundwork done. We know how to build something. Everything's going to be structured correctly. And now we want to build something. So again, we literally kind of, think about, right, this is the components, this is where they are, and this is what we need to build. And dun, dun, dun. And then we can basically start building those, right? So when we start building those components, we actually start building a component library without even realizing it. So we start building one component, then we build another component, and we basically just keep building until we have that card component done or that whole page component done. And that's what we want to do. We want to start building, because if someone says, go and build a component library, go build a design system, it's a lot of work. And you're like, where do I start? There's too much work. Start small. Start with just one little component, and then just grow it out. And over time, you will eventually have an amazing design system and component library. So basically, then you'll have base components. Again, I'm using Bit. You could use something else, but just a matter of being able to see what components are available to you. And then you basically compose those components to create applications. So now I've got my components. They're now in the design system. They're the component library that anyone can now use to compose the same similar applications across the whole enterprise. So this one here is just the shoe store. I'm going to just quickly show you how the application is built up. So I can go into compositions, and I've got an actual cool component highlighter here, which means I can highlight over every single component to see where it's actually coming from, what version it's actually using. Every single thing is one tiny small component that has its own version and that is completely themable and is completely installable into any of the applications. And it's kind of just really cool to be able to understand how your application is built without actually going into the dev tools and trying to figure out and trying to go to the GitHub repo, etc. So reuse components in any app, that's basically what we're trying to do here, is reuse components so that we're not building 100 components or building the same components again and again. And then you can build, like I built another store. I'm selling headphones now, so very easily I could build that store in seconds just by using those components. And then I built a perfume store, and then I built a sports shoe store, because I like stores. Another great thing is configs as a component. This is where it gets kind of really cool, right? So what happens when you want to have your configuration files and use them across various projects? So if you make that a component, now that's getting interesting. I see he's like, oh, I'm listening now. So sharing ESLint config across your application, right? How many times have you copy and paste the ESLint file across all those apps? So you can create your config as a component and add your rules in here. So, whatever rules, like no console error, you want your developers just get a big error every time they add console. No, that's terrible, don't do that. But basically kind of add your rules. And then you can basically export the config, so module exports and require my ESLint config, and then import that config by using yarn, npm, whatever. And then you just require resolve it. That's the component. And now you have that one there, and you can add more rules to override it as well, so you can extend that ESLint config. So that's kind of cool, and you can do the same with Prettier, with Tailwind, tsconfig, etc. So create one config file, and then just apply it to all your projects, it's just cool. So component-driven, components are truly isolated, scoped to a particular team, independently versioned, independently released, no longer coupled to the app, and can be consumed in the app, any app, many apps. So that's what we all want to try and do. That's what I want you all to go home and just start thinking more in components and about component-driven. And basically, thank you very much for listening. You can follow me on Twitter, Debs_O'Brien. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open, so do ask questions. But we do have time for questions now. We have a microphone that's going to be thrown at you if you do have a question. I'm going to put this up here, which is the demo project. If anyone wants to scan that QR, you can actually go and open that demo project. You can see that. You can actually it's fully open source. It's completely free to use. You can take my components and you can actually just install them with npm or yarn and try them out and build them. Don't judge my code because it's not perfect. But you can see kind of how it's done, and I have some also demos on the ESLint configs and the Tailwind configs, etc., etc. So yeah, play around with it and let me know what you think. Thank you very much.
B2A Solutions is your trusted IT consulting company located in the heart of Europe. We design, build, and maintain scalable and user-friendly solutions tailored to your needs. Want to join a team that is shaping the future of the JavaScript ecosystem in Belgium? A team involved in the community by organizing events and contributing to open source? Join B2A Solutions now.